Hello out there, and before we get started today, I just want to wish everyone a belated Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. From myself to each and every one of you who are watching the videos, supporting the channel, whatever it is, I just really hope that you are having a good holiday season that has treated you well, and that we finish 2017 on a high note and start 2018 on the right foot. Alright guys, but today what we are focused on, the knife topic today is the Spyderco Shaman, and following up on my initial impressions video from a few months ago. And this was a model that I was really excited to get my hands on, one that I was looking forward to quite a bit because the Native 5 is one of my favorite models from Spyderco, one of my favorite EDC knives that's out there. And so when Spyderco decided to enlarge the knife basically and give us a more beefy version of the Native in this Shaman, I was very interested to see what they would do and how that knife would be. So I picked it up, did the first impressions video, posted it, and then this knife really quickly sort of got removed from my EDC rotation. And a lot of that might be that there was probably a lot of other good things going on, a lot of other new knives that I had to test, sure, but also just the general size of the knife is not usually what I would gravitate towards when it comes to EDC. And you can see, you know, the Sage 5 next to the Shaman, how much bigger the Shaman is. And so, yeah, Shaman probably not going to be like my typical EDC knife. And then for some reason in the past month, I pulled this knife back out and started using it again. And I'm not sure exactly, you know, why I went with this one, but since I did, it has not really left my side. You know, I've been carrying it at least 3 times a week and have liked almost every minute of it. And so I wanted to take a couple minutes today and just follow up on that previous video, elaborate on some of the points, clarify some of them, and just hit some of the other high points of the knife. I will link to that first impressions video down below, so you can check that out if you like. But let's just get into some of the other things that I have noticed and some of the things I want to clear up about the Shaman. And one of my first qualms with it, and again, one of the things that kept it from being just a staple of my EDC, is the overall size of the knife. But that doesn't mean that the blade length is very big. And so let's take a look at that. I mean, here it is again next to the Sage 5, and you can see how it dwarfs the Sage 5. And another knife that it is just much larger than is right here in the Mantra. But when we line these knives up, and you can see just like the difference in size is pretty significant, but the cutting edge is exactly the same. So we have a 3.25 inch cutting edge on the Mantra and then also on the Shaman. And so what that really means is that as much as they enlarged the knife and gave us a really long knife with a lot of real estate for ergonomics, I mean, look at all that extra space back here. And we'll get into that in just a minute. As much as they did that, you know, this is not this big overblown knife when it comes to the cutting edge. And so if you're one of those people who might have been interested in this knife because the Native was too small for you, this one might be too small for you too, even though it is significantly bigger. Because a lot of people, when they are looking at, you know, the size of a knife, the number one thing that they care about is the cutting edge and the blade length. And the blade length on this knife just isn't as big as you would think with the rest of the overall length. So something to you know, keep in mind there when you are considering a purchase. You know, bringing back the Mantra, you can see just every other aspect of it, the broadness of the knife, the height of it, the length of the handle, everything else is just, you know, wildly different. But the cutting edge, exactly the same. And one other thing in terms of dimensions that was surprisingly not that big of a deal in terms of the size is the thickness. Looking at the thickness, and here's the Sage 5 again. Looking at the thickness, you can see, you know, there is a definite bigger thickness when it comes to the Shaman, but it's not that excessive. And so what that means is that when I was carrying this knife in my pocket, it really wasn't that big. You know, it's long, so it fills the pocket, the depth of it, but overall, it wasn't that bulky, and it wasn't a hindrance at all. I mean, here we are with the little Native, all right? So really similar designs on these two knives, but take a look at the thickness. All right, so I think proportionally speaking, the Shaman, for its overall length, is actually pretty thin, surprisingly enough. So definitely wanted to clear up that aspect of it, just the size aspect, because I don't want to be misleading in any of my videos, and I certainly want you to get the right impression when it comes to the size of the knife and who this knife might be for. All right, and then moving on back and talking about ergonomics, the ergos of this knife are excellent, and I don't know, it just becomes more clear to me that they're very, very good the more that I use it. You know, one of the things that I thought was a bit of an obstacle, a bit of a detractor when I first used the knife, was there was a little bit of sharpness on the inside of the G10. You know, just the way that it's milled, you know, here and down here. And it's one of those knives, though, that when you're using it and you get it in hand, you just naturally find the most comfortable spot, and all of that is completely avoided. And I said that in the first impressions video, and I just wanted to clarify that has continued to happen, and I've never really had any issues with hot spots with this knife. You know, and some of the comments in the first video were saying, oh, all you got to do is take sandpaper to it and, you know, just round that out just a little bit, take a few minutes and you'll be good to go. And yes, that is 100% right. But I haven't even had to do that because it's an afterthought when I'm using the knife. So yeah, not a big deal at all. I wish it wasn't sharp, just like to the touch, but in use, which obviously that's what you have the knife for, is to use it, not an issue whatsoever, not even a little bit. All right, other things about the ergos that are just really, really beneficial in terms of using the knife heavily is just a long handle. Like I said here, just a number of grip configurations, a number of ways to hold the knife, and they're all very, very comfortable. The spider hole on this knife, let me see if I can bring in another one. So the spider hole on this knife, and maybe you can't tell that much here, but it's a pretty darn big hole. And so this is a good knife, a friendly ergonomic knife to someone who has larger hands, or even someone wearing gloves. I mean, if you're wearing gloves, this might be as good of an EDC, a folding EDC, as you can imagine. You know, because it does have that friendly cutting edge, but it does have so many good spots for you to put your hands, and you'll be able to open the knife relatively easily, even wearing gloves. All right, and now as we move on back, one of the other things I wanted to mention was just the way this knife opens and closes. It's pretty darn smooth, just like I said in the first video. Opens quickly. I have seen a lot of videos and a lot of people who have had this knife and they've disassembled it and made it so that it was so silky smooth that it free dropped. And you can see that mine still does not free drop. It has been broken in. I've used it quite a bit. It has been broken in and it is a lot smoother. And let's see if I can do this on camera. It does Spidey flick. So, I mean, there is that. But mine still doesn't free drop. Now, I have lubricated it, and I can actually loosen the pivot screw just a little bit and get it to free drop, but then that creates just a little bit of side to side, and I don't want any of that in this knife. Not at all. So this knife has 100% perfect lockup, no movement whatsoever, and it is still a lot smoother than it was when I first got it. So, I mean, I think that if you wanted to allow just a little bit of side-to-side play, you could get this knife to free drop. I'm not sure how other people are getting it to do that, but no worries. Regardless, it's perfectly functional, perfectly smooth, and the lockup is excellent with the compression lock. So just really strong. One other thing to mention about the jimping, which, sorry, I just saw this again and noticed it. I did talk about how this sort of could hurt your thumb just bearing down on it over a long period of time. And while that's true, I just think that the way that the jimping is done is good enough that it certainly counteracts that negative for hard use, just in terms of the fact that you have so much jimping. And here we are trying to get it in focus. Here we are. So we have so much jimping, and it is so good and grippy that for EDC tasks, it's going to be nothing short of excellent. And I think that if you were using this knife over a long period of time, you know, it might be worth it to maybe either put on gloves or, you know, or just deal with it. You know, let your thumb get a little calloused and and work the knife a little bit. So overall, guys, I don't know. I'm just really happy with the way that the knife is. You know, the way that it carries, the overall length. It's a good larger EDC for me, and I'm finding that, you know, despite the fact that it is a large overall knife, it's one that I am really enjoying carrying, and it's sort of making me like change and maybe adjust my preferences a little bit, because knives like this certainly can be good for me to use. So definitely something I'm going to be looking at in the future, and maybe opening up some of the potential knives that I purchase to include things that are a little bit larger based on my experience with this one. All right, so any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. But again, just wanted to follow up with some more details and a little bit more information about this one. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Let me know, do you like this knife more than the Native? Has this one been a huge hit for you, or has this one been a disappointment? I can say for me that if I had actually used this knife a lot more, this would have been a contender for the top 10 knives of the year, no doubt. But again, at the time that I filmed that, I'd only just gotten back into to carrying this knife a lot more. So again, guys, your feedback always really important and appreciated. So let me know if there's anything else that I can do, and I will talk with you soon. Have a good one.